Hello and welcome to episode 17 of the Success by Design Weekly Masterclass with me, your host for today's session, Abigail Barnes. And today I am so excited to be joined by the amazing Laura Coleman, who is the founder of Be Modern Meditation. And we are going to be having a conversation all about meditation, and it's going to go everywhere, and I'm so excited. And if you're joining us live, then please post your comments into the comments so that we can see and answer your questions. And if you're joining on the replay, feel free to leave any of the questions in the comments, and either Laura or I will get back to the questions that you have as we go along. Just checking that we are live and you can see us and hear us. And then we will continue. So, one second, bit of a delay today. Don't know what's going on.
Good old technology.
Let's just check on LinkedIn. Going the old-fashioned way about this. Yes, we are live. Amazing. Sorry about that, people. So, without further ado, Laura, hello, welcome.
Hello.
Thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So awesome to have you here today. So for those of you who don't know me, I am the founder of Success by Design Training. We are on a mission to help 1 million people create better work-life balance by 2025. And we do that with our 888 formula training, of which your health and your mindset is a huge part of your life. And I worked with Laura late last year around meditation because I was so stressed about it, what it is. I had no clue. Poor Laura, the first time we sat down to work together, I came out with the questions that all my clients always ask me. So we are going to ask Laura these exact same questions, and she is going to give us the reasons why it is so beneficial. So the questions are always around: what's all the fuss about? What's the point? How do I do it? Will it work for me? And then how do I make time? So Laura, why don't you tell us a little bit about you, what led you to where you are today, and why meditation is such an amazing superpower?
Absolutely. And I have to say, you weren't a nightmare. You were actually really typical of the type of people I work with. So it was an absolute pleasure to guide you through some meditation. So my backstory of how I came to meditation was I had a really successful corporate career with Waitrose, and had a fantastic time opening a Canary Wharf branch. And I'd moved into management development and personnel, and I had this great life. And then I had 2 children really close together, and I moved to Australia with my family. So suddenly I went from having this identity as somebody with a career to being a stay-at-home mum, living thousands and thousands of miles away with no support network. And looking back, probably unsurprisingly, there was a big sense of loss of identity. You know, staying at home with young people it's challenging. And I reached a breaking point where looking back, I think I was suffering from depression and anxiety. I didn't recognize that at the time. What I recognized was that life felt really hard. On the outside, I looked fine. I was project managing a house build, volunteering at a charity, really involved with school, hectic life. So on the outside, I looked like I was living my best life, but inside, it was a really different story. And my kind of turning point moment came when I wrote in my journal one day, "I am nothing." And the shock of not only writing those words, but feeling them so deeply led me to a place of something's got to change. And as I think quite often can happen in life, you reach that breaking point and suddenly the thing that you need comes along. And for me, that was meditation. So I suppose I stumbled across meditation at the time, but it became this scaffolding that took me from this place of overwhelmed, lost connection to myself, unable to really enjoy life, to then suddenly feeling that there was more space. There was more space to think. There was more space to focus. I was able to suddenly take control of my life again and get back in touch with what was meaningful to me. And so it led me to then explore more. So I then studied psychology and mindfulness and acceptance commitment therapy. And I became really passionate about, how do you help people? How could I help other people who were stuck like I was? And I kept looping back really to the fundamental piece of the puzzle was the meditation for me. It changed everything about how I experienced my life, and it unlocked my life. So when I moved back to the UK, that's when I founded Be Modern Meditation. I sort of got the final piece of the puzzle, which was the meditation teacher training. And the program that I run at Be Modern Meditation really brings together the psychology, the neuroscience, the practical training of meditation with that real grounding in my own experience of finding life really hard, so that I can guide people to a place where not only they can meditate, because, actually you could do that on an app, but actually so that they can experience every day of their life in a much more meaningful way, so they can build the life that they want.
Amazing. And we all want the life that we want. If you are joining us now, then please leave any questions that you've got for Laura in the comments, and we will get to them as we go along, if technology allows us to see them. So tell me a little bit then about Be Modern Meditation and what it does, why it's different to downloading an app, and so the kind of journey that you take the clients on with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, I have a 7-session program that I run people through. Now, the fundamentals of that, the intro level, is how do you make meditation actually attainable and accessible? Because most of the people I come across, like yourself, actually, they have come into contact with meditation. It hasn't worked for them. They feel like they're not good at it. They can't stop their mind from thinking. They haven't got time in their life, or they think, you know what? It's not for me. I'm not going to go and move to the Himalayas and suddenly become, this sort of tree hugging person. So for me, that intro needed to bust the myths in a really science-based and practical way, to give people a toolkit that they could use straight away. And that's the workshop and the talks I most often take into organizations or deliver talks on, because people come away from that session with a really practical toolkit, and we really break down not only how does it work in the brain and in the body, how does it impact stress, but we also look at making it work in your actual life. So you learn the techniques, you learn why it's important and what it's doing, and then you actually learn how to make it happen in your life, the exact life that you've got, not trying to suddenly think that you're going to turn into somebody who gets up at 5 o'clock in the morning, if that's not who you are. So there's some really useful tools and things that we go through. So and beyond that intro, the rest of the program is about layering up and giving you a totally different way of experiencing life. So it's about learning how to meditate, but as you said before, you can get that from an app. You could if you wanted to. This is about giving you a process that not only is going to integrate into your life, but is actually going to change your life. So looking at, how do you think about the things in your life? How do you experience happiness in your life? How can you get more focus? How can you sleep better? How can you be more balanced? And how can you integrate that? So the whole program is around giving you a combination of science, practical tools, the psychology of it, and really getting underneath your experience. And I think that's probably the fundamental difference, is that it's very much about the individual and making it tailored so that you get what you need. And everybody's journey is so different. So I joke with people, because of the kind of the 6 core sessions of the program after the intro, everybody seems to have like a breakthrough session, and it comes at different times. And for me as a coach, that's the most powerful thing, is seeing that unlocking process happening, and how different an individual that is for people.
So 2 things that come up for myself in the conversations that I generally have with people. So one of them is, I tried it and I couldn't sit still, maybe for a minute, and then my focus kept going off all over the place. And I think this was what I said to you when we had our first session together. And it's also what other people sort of say to me every time I talk about it. But you said two things in that first session which were really, really important to help me to recognize why it was worthwhile learning this as a skill. Because meditation, to me, I see it as like a skill, as an exercise, like the same as going to the gym and stretching the muscles that we have in our body. Meditation is sort of a similar skill in my mind, if you like. So you said two things to me which made me then want to pursue it and get to the stage where I could meditate for longer. And one of them, if you could just talk to us a little bit more about it, one of them was that you were talking about how it can help to improve my immune system and reduce the stress, and so help my body. And also, I think you might have said, make me look younger, which obviously is a huge benefit. And then the second thing was around the energy that I would get as a result of it. And that once you really learn how to meditate at a high level, it can be the equivalent of sleep. So these are two major benefits that I would love you to just tell us a little bit more about the science of it and why and how and what happens. And yeah.
Great question. So I think you're referring the usefulness comes from the telomeres and what it does to the telomeres. We'll come on to that. So the science around what meditation does for stress is really powerful. So the first thing is, obviously our nervous system has two tracks. We're either in stress response or we're in relaxation response. Now, we evolved to be in stress response actually only about 20% of the time, because we would have been, we would have had maybe a tiger on the horizon and then we'd have been safe again. Now, our modern world isn't like that. We're actually in stress response more like 80% of the time. And that has a number of knock-on effects to our health, which I'll talk about in a minute. But essentially, the first step of what meditation is doing is it's interrupting and it's actually switching you track. So you do it even, and I think that between 7 and 10 minutes, I think it is, you can literally switch your track, your nervous system track. So that kind of reset of I've gone from stress response to relaxation response. And the really powerful thing to know is that it doesn't matter if you feel calm in your meditation, you are still switching that on, because often when we're exceptionally stressed, the meditation, and I remember I showed this to you before, I use this little snow globe here as my little metaphor for this. So if you imagine, like, this is most of us, and in fact, if I give it a really hard shape, most of us are like this, if you imagine this is the thoughts and the stress in our body and our system. So no wonder when we suddenly stop, it still feels pretty snowy. Now, so that's the first thing to note with this switching tracks. It doesn't have to feel like you're switching tracks. You are. And the next stage to, why is that significant? Why does that matter? If I'm not stressed for 5 minutes, but I go straight back to stress, well, what the hell difference does that make? Now, the reason it makes a difference to our ongoing health and the way that stress impacts us in the body and holistically is that when there's a really big difference between chronic stress and acute stress in how it impacts the body. Now, chronic stress is the kind of stress that most of us experience. So that's ongoing, relentless, constant, notifications, emails, pressure, deadlines, financial problems, traffic, you name it, relationships. And it's this one blob that's never ending. And then, of course, we try and get to bed at night, and of course we can't sleep. Now, when we meditate and we switch tracks, we turn that chronic stress we have this breaker. So we turn it into a series of acute stresses instead. And that's really important because that has a really different impact on our body, right down to a cellular level, than if we experience just that ongoing chronic stress. And I think sometimes understanding that that's what you're doing with meditation is the start to really, by giving it the power in your own life to say, this can genuinely make a difference. It doesn't have to feel good. It doesn't have to feel like it's making a difference, that I know that I'm fundamentally changing my body's experience of stress.
Because we can't always see what's going on under the surface, can we? So it's stresses and burnout and things like this, they're such a slow, silent, they're almost like gas, if that's even a thing these days, where you don't know, and it's just
Well, it's like boiling the frog. Is
burning.
it frogs that you boil alive, or what is it that you boil alive? I can't remember.
Sure.
I think it's frogs. You put them in cold water and then you slowly put the heat up and then they boil alive, because if you tried to put the live frog in boiling water, it would jump straight out. But because you turn the heat up slowly, it boils to death without knowing. And I think that's kind of an analogy for, we're all like these little frogs boiling alive in our lives.
Yeah, well, and this is the thing with stress, with burnout, with the chronic illnesses that we have. They can creep up on us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's insidious. Yeah.
So the meditation is almost like a vitamin that you can have every day to keep your immune system. So talk to me a little bit then about the immune system and what it's doing for you.
So one of the things that so one way I describe kind of what happens in the brain is, if we use like the brain as a hand, is that, if you imagine like the lower part of my hand here would be like my survival system, my reptile brain. So this part of the system is all about survival, breathing, heart rate, and it's also where fight or flight is. And it's that fight or flight that is the thing that gets triggered. It's like a faulty smoke alarm in our life. It's kind of constantly going off. And when that goes off, it triggers, so it goes up to this little almond shape, so this next level of my brain. And this, if there's videos on this brain as the hand, it's Dr. Siegel. If anyone wants to look it up on YouTube, this would be like my limbic system, my emotional mammal brain up here, and tucked underneath here is a little amygdala, and the amygdala is that alarm bell. And when that goes off, it triggers that fight or flight, which then obviously sets off all of the stress hormones and all the things that we associate with stress. But it also does a couple of things, like it downregulates a couple of systems, and this is what's significant with the immune system. So if I'm back in the day, what would have been triggering my alarm bell would have been something like a tiger on the horizon. Now, if there's a tiger on the horizon, my immune system does not need to be ramped off to fight off a cold, because if I'm going to fight for my life, I don't need to fight off a cold. So in that moment of being in that stress response, my immune system gets downregulated. But when you suddenly are in chronic stress, when you're in that stress response for 80% of the time, suddenly you have a system that the immune system is downregulated all the time. And I think probably most of us have experienced that scenario of going on holiday, you finally get your holiday and you go, and then you get sick. It's because suddenly that stress response switches off and our body goes, finally I can deal with all of this. So the immune system kicks back online, and suddenly we're sick. Or worst case scenario, and I think this is where that kind of links to burnout, is that we end up in a situation where we just keep going and we just keep going, but eventually the body can't do it anymore, and the immune system, we just can't cope. And so then we end up having something much more significant come along to bite us. And the other system that gets impacted is our digestive system, for similar reasons, because if I'm going to be a tiger's lunch, I don't need to digest mine. So again, being in constant stress response then starts to have an impact on my digestion. And 95% of our serotonin, that feel-good chemical in the brain, is actually produced in the gut. So if my gut is offline because my nervous system thinks I'm fighting tigers for 80+% of the time, it makes sense that you get symptoms like IBS, you get sluggish digestion, you get, you're not getting the nutrients from your food, and you don't get that feel good. And so mood regulation becomes more difficult. So it really is massive, the impact that stress has. And it sounds crazy to think that something as simple as even 5 minutes of meditation a day can have an impact, but it's because it's this breaker circuit. And it's really powerful what it does in the nervous system.
Isn't it amazing that just, who would have thought sitting and being still could have so many knock-on effects? And I think this is what got me interested in learning more at the beginning when we started sort of working together. So who do you work with then? Who are your clients?
Well, you imagine that kind of cocktail of stress and pressure. It's those kind of people who are at that point where they're sensing, I can't cope with this stress anymore. Something's going to break, something's going to give. So it's people who are on potentially actually looking like they are nailing it in life. They've got the job they always wanted. They've got the family, they've got the life, they've got the busyness, they've got all the trappings of that. But that underneath they're feeling this accumulation of stress, and they don't know how to release it. They don't know how to have a sustainable way, because it's not always practical to just take yourself off to a retreat or a holiday. You need something that you can have an intervention every day that's going to change how your body processes that stress. So it's often busy executives, it's management development, management consultants. I've got TV producers, but saying that, within that, I also have people who are stay-at-home mums, or who, the common factor, I guess, is not so much what's causing stress, it's the fact that somebody's reached a point, I suppose similar to how I did, of I can't go on like this anymore. And I sense, you start to get this sense that maybe there's a way I could experience life that doesn't have to feel like this.
And that's it, is that it's the people who say, I've spent my whole life fighting for everything, and I have to get myself motivated and into state. And then when you learn how to meditate, you just are.
Yeah. It's a big shift. But I think what's interesting is that I think sometimes what holds people back from giving it a try is that there's this sense of, well, if I stop pushing so hard, and if I stop trying and pushing and making it happen, I'm not going to be successful. I'm not going to be able to, I'm not going to be able to kick those goals. I'm not going to be able to support my family. I'm not going to be able to have a good career. But in reality, there's this sort of weirdly, inverse relationship to actually, you take the effort and you put that effort into your life in a different way. And your productivity, your focus, your ability to stay in the present, to actually, you start to create this space between you and the things that are happening, so that rather than just being reactive and feeling like there's no space to decide, suddenly you've got this lovely space to make better decisions, make clearer decisions, and do the things that matter. So you can be less busy, but more effective.
Love that. Nobody wants to work harder these days.
Well, it's very 888, isn't it, that?
Yeah, it's all about how we can work smarter. So meditation is a superpower. So tell us a little bit more about your mission. What is your vision for your business? Why do you do what you do?
So as I mentioned before with my story, I think sometimes when you reach a rock bottom, you become really passionate about, it doesn't have to be this way. As you come out the other side of that, you think it's like that kind of epiphany moment of like, wow. And suddenly the idea that other people are walking around experiencing suffering, you think, wow, I want to do something about that. So for me, there's kind of two levels to my mission. So on the first level, I really want to make meditation attainable for anyone, because I know that my intro program, it literally, people walk into that. I mean, I've had rooms full of construction guys, and they're kind of like, what the hell am I in a meditation workshop for? And by the end, they're going, yeah, do you know what? I could do that. Yeah, I can do that on the train. Yeah, actually. And they want to, and they build it into their lives. And for me, that's amazing. And I think that the ripple effect of even just that small amount of convincing people, actually, this could be for you because it's for anyone, would be huge. And then for the second part of that mission is about really fundamentally transforming people's lives, and I see the results in clients I work with, going from, I had a message from a client the other day who, she said, she said, I've come a long way from being, I don't know what her words were. Basically, she was surviving on 3 or 4 hours sleep a night. She was on antidepressants. She was like drinking Diet Coke to get her through the day. She was feeling terrible about herself. She was struggling to balance. She's a TV producer. She's also developing properties and has young children. She was just feeling completely out of control. And now the way she describes her life is just that things are flowing more effortlessly. She's enjoying her life, and she's just can't believe the difference. And for me, that's my mission, is to help as many people as I can to see that there's another way to experience their life.
Amazing. Love it. So guys, Laura has very kindly recorded 2 meditations for us. One is an awareness meditation, and then the other one is a sleep meditation. And you can get access to these. They are 8 minutes, and they are in the 8-minute challenge library. So I'll leave a link in the comments below. It's absolutely free for you to join the challenge, and you'll be able to experience Laura's amazing meditations in there. So can't wait to hear how you find them. Now, final question, Laura, where can we find out more about you?
Oh, I love that question. You can check out my website, which is bemodernmeditation.com. And there's a little video there that describes a bit more about the work that I do. And you can download an ebook that tells you about how my program works. And there's lots of like kind of meditation tidbits in there and things, little bits of information. You can also check me out on social media. So I'm at Be Modern Meditation on Instagram and Facebook. And I'm on LinkedIn as Laura Coleman. So
Amazing.
yeah, connect with me.
We'll leave all the connection links in the comments as well. So Laura, thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome.
I am unable to see if we've got any comments due to the tech link up. But as we mentioned, if anybody's got any comments, leave them in the comment box and we will come back and get to them later. And thank you so much for your time today and for sharing just a little bit of an intro into what is the point of meditation with us. And yeah, so guys, thank you for being with us and look forward to seeing you again next week.